Hello and welcome to the Retail Therapy Podcast. I'm Nicola Conway and I'm a Senior Associate in Bird & Bird's Retail and Consumer team.
And I'm Evie Scott. I'm a trainee currently sitting in the same team. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the rise of AI in the retail and consumer space. We're joined by Shariqa Mestroni. Shariqa, would you like to kindly introduce yourself and a little bit about your role?
Hi everyone, I'm Shariqa Mestroni. I'm a Special Counsel in the Sydney team at Bird & Bird. I work closely with brands in the retail and consumer sector with a focus on intellectual property, consumer law and brand protection.
Shariqa, it's great to have you on the podcast. I understand that you've just spoken at the Global Sourcing Seminar in Sydney in June. Can you share with us a little bit about what that entailed?
Yes, absolutely. The seminar series was at the Global Sourcing Expo, which is a convention that is focused on apparel, footwear, textiles, and the homeware subsectors. I co-presented with my colleagues, Jessica Laverty and James Hoy, who specialises in dispute resolution, data protection, and privacy on the topic of generative AI in the retail sector. The reason we took a cross-practice approach to this topic is because AI laws and regulations touch on so many areas of the law. I spoke about some of the IP implications of using generative AI. Jess spoke about AI regulation, including how suppliers in Australia could be required to comply with the upcoming EU AI Act. And James spoke about how current privacy laws and regulations in Australia are pertinent for users of generative AI. So in a nutshell, the rise of generative AI has presented a wave of opportunities for the retail industry, which we've seen through numerous uses and applications, but it's also presented significant challenges for individuals and businesses. So we also spoke about some really good strategies for mitigating risks, which were also set out in the article that we co-authored following the presentation, and that's on the Bird & Bird website.
That all sounds great. And if anyone wants a copy of that, just reach out. We can send that over. And I do want to make sure that we circle back to talk about those risks and opportunities that you mentioned. But first, and this is honestly mostly for my own benefit, I wonder if we could take just one step back and ask you to walk us through the basics of what generative AI actually is.
Good question. Let's take a step back and consider AI first, of which generative AI is a subset. There's no single unified definition of AI, but taking one of those definitions, the International Organization for Standardization, or ISO, defines it as an engineered system that generates outputs such as content, forecasts, recommendations, or decisions for a given set of human-defined objectives. As I mentioned, generative AI is a subset of AI. It includes tools such as ChatGPT, DALL-E, UChat, and Australia's Chief Scientist Rapid Response Information Report, which was recently published, distinguishes generative AI from AI as follows. Whereas conventional AI has been largely analytic, generative AI takes its name from its capacity to generate novel content as varied as text, image, music, and computing code in response to a user prompt. So it essentially deploys algorithms to create new content by following user prompts.
So as a really basic general summary, it's learning from data and generating original content.
Exactly. It works by using algorithms to analyze patterns and relationship within existing data, namely training data. So there are some key elements involved: training data, an AI model, user prompts, and AI outputs. The AI model is trained on training data, which is typically a large or many large data sets. In this way, the AI model learns complex patterns. When a user enters a prompt, the AI model will use the training data and its learnings to generate output. Common types of generative AI include variational autoencoders, or VAEs, generative adversarial networks, or GANs, GANs, and then autoregressive models. And each of those models have their own unique architecture and training procedure, but they all aim to capture and reproduce the distribution of training data.
Wow, that all sounds very technical. Can you expand a bit on how these models work?
Sure, let's take GANs for example. They consist of two neural networks, a generator and a discriminator. And when I talk about a neural network, these are really the backbone of generative AI. They provide the computational framework for learning complex patterns in data and generating new content. So the generator and the GAN generates new samples like images and text, while the discriminator evaluates the authenticity of these samples. As mentioned, a key element in generative AI models is training. So, through training, the generator aims to fool the discriminator, and the discriminator aims to distinguish real from fake samples. I should add the training data, which is the input during that period, is crucial. The quantity, quality, and diversity of training data directly impacts the model's ability to learn and generalize. So, models trained on diverse and representative data sets are more likely to generate realistic and diverse outputs. It avoids errors, which we call hallucinations in AI speak, or biases in the data outputs.
Thanks for that great overview, Shariqa. That's been really helpful in explaining a bit of background to the world of AI. I'm hoping, now that we've got to grips with the essentials, we can explore how the retail market is interacting with Gen AI.
Absolutely. So, Gen AI is potentially one of the fashion industry's most transformative technologies, just taking one example. And it's a situation where the cart has bolted before the horse in some ways, the cart being the industry and the horse being the laws and regulation. So, McKinsey commissioned a report at the start of the year titled State of Fashion 2024, in which it surveyed global fashion executives. They found that 73% of the respondents said that generative AI will be a priority for their businesses in 2024. But another statistic that I found to be interesting was that only 5% of those surveyed believed they had the capabilities to fully leverage AI in their businesses. This suggests that fashion companies, like many other industries, are not yet fully capturing its value in creative and business processes. There's also clearly a huge gap in the level of understanding and skills required to fully leverage AI. Despite this, we're still seeing a number of use cases in the retail sector that demonstrate how Gen AI can add value. These examples include in product development and innovation, such as writing briefs for a product collection, generating mood boards to incentivize design team, and then various visual imagery that can help create ideas. Supply chain and logistics, such as augmenting real-time demand forecasting. And we're seeing it in marketing, such as hyper personalizing loyalty programs, store operations and sales, and the customer experience. And the list basically can go on. So, on a very practical level, you and I might have come across some examples, most commonly in the form of online shopping assistants that pop up to ask if you need any help or provide some customized product recommendations. And one of the most common use cases in the market that we've seen in using Gen AI is to write product descriptions for websites or copy editing.
That's interesting what you say about copy editing. I read recently that the company Adore Me, which I think is part of Victoria's Secret now, they've been partnering with a company called Writer. So, from what I understand, Writer is a generative AI platform that's basically a big language model. So, Adore Me is seemingly using Write to write its product descriptions, its press releases, its Google search ads, and all of that sort of stuff, which I think must be pretty efficient in terms of human time and human cost savings.
That seems to be what is being reported, absolutely. And that's the same as Shopify, which has also introduced Gen AI. They've been using a tool called Shopify Magic. The tool allows merchants to automatically generate product descriptions, edit images, and suggest personalized FAQs. More recently, I understand that Shopify has announced it will be releasing a generative AI chatbot, and that chatbot will be able to fill out forms such as create a student discount for 10% for back to school in August, or write content and even put items on sale.
And sort of building on that conversation about AI technology and Gen AI tools, I don't know if either of you have heard of Step One. It's an underwear brand that is using AI technology across its marketing processes, which has resulted in strategic cost cutting. The team are using programs such as ChatGPT and AI photo editing via Photoshop, and these tools are allowing designers to reduce their workload, and they're cutting down marketing output from days to minutes. The team also uses AI to create new advertising based on past successful campaigns. The AI tool is able to reimagine an old advert almost instantly, and this has resulted in large reductions in inventory and advertising spend. In 2022, they spent $23.6 million in advertising, and that's compared to $32 million in 2021. What is also quite interesting to note is that Step 1 is now looking to integrate AI into email marketing. So they're using the AI marketing software Klaviyo to add to emails key customer segments generated via AI-driven data analysis. This means that certain groups of customers will be sent ads for products they're interested in, down to things like underwear quality or quantity. The company has also recently revealed plans to incorporate AI tech into stock forecasting and inventory management. And this will allow them to forecast product demand based on historical sales data and delivery times.
I think it's really cool that it's becoming more commonplace for companies to be using AI in their, just business as usual operational tasks.
That sounds right. We've also seen brands being able to lean on Gen AI for larger one off events. And this has been done most recently by the brand Ganni. At its spring summer 2024 runway show, Ganni used Gen AI to create an installation that allowed a guest to ask questions and receive answers. The idea came from Ganni's co founder and creative director, Dite Refstadt, who wanted to create a kinder, more thoughtful AI. Ganni worked with digital artist Cecile Wagner Falkensturm and her studio artificial mind to create a special AI that uses a similar model to ChatGPT. The AI was trained on data from brand as well as online interviews with social media comments from fans and influencers. So guests at the show could interact with the AI by asking a question and receiving a response tailored to Ganni's view of the world, which essentially aligned with Ganni's community and their varied interests ranging from sustainability to socializing.
That's so interesting. I really think there is something to be said for using Gen AI as an artistic tool. It provides all these possibilities, but the artist is still able to define and construct a creation tailored to what they want. Another brand that has done this, and to add to Shariqa's example, the luxury label Casablanca used AI to create a campaign for its Spring-Summer 2023 Futuro Optimisto collection. They actually partnered with an AI artist, Luke Nugent, and used the image creator Midjourney to produce campaign images. What I think was really interesting was that those involved in the campaign said that using AI didn't actually save them time or on processes, but it did produce other efficiencies, such as not needing to call models from a run sheet or scout for shooting locations. And the art director at Casablanca, Steve Grimes, said that creating images using AI is still very much about planning and creativity. There is still this artistic vision behind the campaign. The AI tool changed how brands address hiring models and scouting locations.
I think that's a really good example, actually, Evie, because I think a lot of the time when we talk about implementing AI, people have this presumption that AI will replace the human input. But actually, what we're seeing is that in many cases, and as you've both just spoken to, AI isn't replacing humans. It's actually just being used to provide inspiration to basically make the human output better or maybe broader. In fact, we hear quite a bit from our fashion clients that AI can be super helpful to inspire their designers. So, for example, they can use it to do more rapid design mock-ups or iterations, and they can also use it to compile mood boards that will draw from a much broader source than obviously the immediate team.
100%. And it does sound like Gen AI really offers a plethora of opportunities to build new capabilities across retailers. And in line with that, Shariqa, are you seeing an increase in funding for AI-focused companies?
We certainly are. So, a huge amount of funding has gone into Gen AI focused startups. For example, equity funding for Gen AI startups reached 14.1 billion in the first half of 2023 compared to 3.5 billion in 2021, and 2.5 billion in 2022. So interesting that there was a little bit of a lag last year or the year before, but essentially it's on a very explosive trajectory right now. These figures suggest that we'll be seeing an increased number of opportunities for retailers and fashion companies to fill the gaps between their Gen AI goals and the reality of where their technology currently is.
Wow, okay, those are pretty impressive numbers. I do want to shift a little bit more legal here if we can, because I'm really interested in hearing from you, Shariqa. How does such rapid and widespread innovation affect your IP practice?
Well, the difficulty is that there isn't a general consensus on how legislative bodies are approaching IP protection and enforcement involving AI. This can be really confusing, not only for brands, but actually for lawyers too. When we look at who owns IP in the output generated by AI, is it the person or entity that created the AI model? Or is it the person or entity that entered the prompts? Or is it the AI tool itself? There can be so many layers of complexity there. In Australia, for example, it was settled last year that an AI tool cannot be named as an inventor of a patent. Similarly, under the Australian Copyright Act, although this question has not been directly decided by court, it would not be possible for AI to be considered the author or owner of a copyright work. This is because author must be a qualified person under the Act at the time that the work was made. So they'd have to be an Australian citizen or a resident or body corporate, and they must have exerted independent intellectual effort in creating the work. So even if we take the AI tool from the equation, when it comes to patents and copyright, there are still a lot of questions that we need to answer, and so it needs to be assessed on a case by case basis. Then there is also the issue of who is liable for the AI output and whether that output infringes IP. This is being tested currently in a number of courts in the UK, the US, and China. So we'll have to watch this space before any jurisprudence emerges from the courts.
Wow, okay. So there's definitely a lot to keep in mind in the IP space. I think there are also some updates on privacy reforms and the intersectionality between technology and data protection concerns. So perhaps we should ask one of our data protection colleagues to join us on a future episode to dip into that as well.
100%. Great idea. Right, well, we've covered quite a bit here already, so let me try and see if I can recap. I think the overarching takeaway has to be that innovations like generative AI do necessitate a bit of horizon scanning just so that retailers are well prepared to quickly flex and pivot to ensure that they're able to navigate the legal landscape as it continuously changes in a legally compliant way.
I second that sentiment. In terms of progressing in the current landscape, I would say a couple of things. Firstly, organisations need to deliver early impact whilst laying the foundations for future scale. The pace of expansion is likely to depend on technology and talent readiness, which will need commitment to new ways of working and investment. Secondly, according to the McKinsey forecasts, companies will see the largest profit gains from Gen AI in product design and assortment, followed by content focused marketing and the customer experience. These are areas that businesses should look to target. Another point is that organizations who don't have the in house resources to develop their own AI models can fine tune third party foundation models, for example, OpenAI or Google, or they could deploy specialized applications that build on existing foundation models but tailored to specific uses. But they should be careful and review the terms and conditions of these AI tools because they may not be favorable for a particular business use. And they'll also need to review them to mitigate any risks. And a final point I want to add is that businesses and employers should protect themselves by establishing a robust AI policy for their employees with clear prohibitions and guardrails. Employees should have regular training around the use of AI tools in line with this policy. So it's no good just having a policy and putting it in the cupboard. You really just need to make sure the employees constantly understand and the policy evolves with the AI tools evolving as well. Good record keeping, such as documenting AI prompts, is also super important.
I think those are brilliant takeaways. Thank you, Shariqa. Okay, it's that time of the episode. Let's close up with a fun little question. Shariqa and then Evie, what's something that you bought recently that you've loved?
So, something that I actually purchased as an audiobook, and it's kind of along the lines of this tech topic a bit, is a book by Gabrielle Zevin, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which some of you may have read or listened to. But I loved it because the narration was by two people, which I thought really brought the characters and story alive. And essentially, it's about three friends. And the reason I say it's on the tech theme is because the novel is set in the 80s and spans about 30 years or so, where two kids grow up together playing and then designing a video game. I'm by no means a hardcore gamer, but as a casual gamer, the novel gave me a little bit of an insight into that world. And even if it's fiction, there were so many layers to it. But the reason I ultimately loved it was because it was about love and friendship when you strip it right back.
I've actually recently read that book too, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good. And so mine's sort of like a similar vein to Shariqa. I'm a really big reader, so I'm always looking for like the next best book. And I recently bought a book called Brotherless Night by Sugi Ganashananthan. And it actually just won the Women's Prize for Fiction. It's set in Sri Lanka during the Civil War, and it follows a family whose lives are just turned upside down by the war. It's really an unforgettable story of a country and a family. Two of the brothers are in the Tamil Tigers. One of the daughters is trying to become a doctor. And it really evoked such strong emotions in me. I even cried at one point, and I just couldn't put it down. So I'd really recommend if you're looking for a great book. And so, Nicola, just returning to you, what's something you've bought recently that you've loved?
Well, I have a coffee that you can both enjoy while you read and listen to your respective books. Nespresso has a new flavour called Vanilla. They used to, many years ago, have a flavour called Vanillio, which was my favourite. But they stopped making it and they replaced it with one called Vanilla Eclair, which was very nice, but not as good. And I'm convinced that this new one, Vanilla, is the same or very, very similar to the original. So it's just the best news I could have, having my original favorite back. There's nothing worse than when a brand discontinues something that you just love so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to try that one as well because I remember loving the vanilla eclair flavour. So that's a good recommendation for me. All right, that's the end of our episode. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to join us for more retail and consumer discussions, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcasts so that you're notified when the next episode goes live. Bye for now.